Welcome to Healing Wisdom, a Thursday morning talk show featuring guests sharing their stories and knowledge. We discuss the healing aspects of the arts, metaphysics, social justice, and adventure through all types of terrain. So join me, Pandora Peoples, here on WOMR 92.1 FM in Provincetown and WFMR 91.3 FM in Orleans. We're streaming worldwide at WOMR.org.
5, 6, 7, 8.
Here's one beauty pageant that you are never going to confuse with Miss America.
The Best in Drag show. It started out as a parody of Miss America.
My name is Misty Opportunity, and I am your Miss Wisconsin.
Truthfully, train wrecks are delicious.
Ladies and gentlemen, Miss Nebraska Braille Centers.
Whoa! Oh!
The crowd lost their shit.
There was this little show that was taking off. It just kept getting bigger and bigger and bigger.
Martin Sheen.
I heard it's pretty wild.
It's like going to Las Vegas, and seeing those big shows. You go, oh, what did I just see?
It's on the stage.
This is the director.
It was a joyous distraction with so much sadness going on in our community.
People we love were dying of AIDS, and so we raised money.
We're here to get your money. Yeah.
This show has raised $6 million. Yeah, $6 million. Pretty much everybody who's a contestant in this show has come from a very dark place, but they've realized that their darkness can provide light for others.
I'm up here fighting the stigma and the prejudice against this disease.
Why should the crown of the new Miss America sit atop your head?
This is a beauty pageant, isn't it?
This is the night. This is the show. These queens are borderline attractive, but they are here to give you the fucking show of your life.
Up next is author, filmmaker, four-time Emmy-winning investigative reporter John Carlos Frey. His documentary film, The Little Pageant That Could, screens at the Provincetown Film Festival this week, today, Thursday, June 13th at 4 p.m. at Town Hall, and Sunday, June 16th at 6:30 at the Art House. His books include Sand and Blood, America's Stealth War on the Mexico Border. Welcome, John Carlos Frey. Thank you so much for being with us today. Your documentary centers on queer life and activism from the little pageant that could's beginnings in a West Hollywood apartment in the 90s to the fundraising powerhouse it is now. So tell us a bit about its history.
Studio apartment, a tiny apartment with a bunch of guys coming over in the late 80s to watch a Miss America pageant, just to all come together and probably have a bite to eat, play poker, and watch Miss America. And some of them decided to dress up and as their favorite state. Somebody dressed up as Miss New York, someone dressed up as Miss Texas, and they had a mock little pageant. And someone thought, oh, well, this was fun. Let's do this again next year at Miss America on the eve or on the day of Miss America when it was going to be on television. In the day that Miss America was much more popular, I think, than it is today. And so that's kind of how it started in its very humble beginnings. It was never supposed to be a fundraiser to help people suffering from AIDS. That wasn't its intention. It was a fun night.
Can you talk about your relationship with this community?
I'm in my 50s, and I grew up in part during the AIDS crisis. And at the beginning and for years, if you had an AIDS diagnosis, you were dead. And I'm sorry to be so blunt about it, but there wasn't anything that anybody could do for you because there wasn't any research. There weren't any races to the cure. I mean, we just came out of a pandemic where to get a vaccine came within a year. This was years and years of the White House not even admitting that there was a crisis and gay men dying left and right. I would say during that time, I was a young, not even a teenager, but my friends, I lost at least half of them. So when this came across for me to put together, I've made documentaries before, usually about serious subject matter. I had to do it. There's not a lot of stuff out there because the people whose lives we should be documenting are gone. So, I mean, obviously there's information about the AIDS crisis, but not as the centerpiece around drag. Drag in that day was activist, It was in your face. It was irreverent. It was bold. It was not professional. It was men in wigs and makeup, and some of them still had beards, and some of them didn't belong in dresses, and they were not professional performers. It was comedy, and it was our only source of comic relief. We had to laugh at ourselves because everything around us was dying. So that's really what it was back then.
Can you talk about finding footage for it and how, you sort of worked as a director?
The show has been on for 35 years. The show has been running since its first time up. So I had to watch 35 years of pageants. I watched every single thing. And as the show got more popular, there were news clips and newsreels and interviews, and celebrities started to show up and interviews with them. So I had this massive amount of hundreds of hours worth of footage. And I watched it all. And the thing that was very apparent was that the story, as it really happened, from beginning to end, how this show grew and saved lives was the story. I mean, I didn't have to put much polish on it. Let's start at the beginning. Let's tell how it started. Let's tell how it grew. Let's show the audience what it became. So that is the story. It's basic storytelling from the beginning. It's its history, the show's history. And throughout, people lost their lives. Throughout, people left and came back to the show. And there were great, powerful moments in the history of the show. This little thing that started in somebody's living room, raising millions of dollars decades later. So
it's just so sweet because it's such an organic, grassroots, heartfelt, tight-knit community.
There was a founder, the originator of the show was HIV positive. His name was Alexis, and was also a performer, and was also the producer, and was also the writer, and was also the person who had it in their living room the very first time. So that spirit of that individual, who also died of AIDS, lives on. And sometimes we believe that it's his spirit that carries it forward. There's really not a professional in the bunch. Everybody's a volunteer. Nobody gets paid. And by a wish and a prayer, the thing gets pulled off, and it's sold out audiences every year for thousands of people to come and watch, and raises hundreds of thousands of dollars, all on this thing that was just kind of by accident.
Did you have any surprises in the making of the film?
I was surprised at how emotionally involved I got. I mean, you're thinking you're watching men with makeup and wigs and doing bad numbers and not being able to sing and dance, and you'd think it would just be a bunch of yucks, laughing it up at bad drag on stage. But these were men with hearts. These were men who were fighting for their lives. There's another component of it too. A lot of the men who put on the show are in recovery. They're suffering from drug addiction and alcohol use. And so a lot of them come in to the show to try and stay sober. So the show becomes a lifeline for them, not only to help people who are suffering from HIV, but also as a lifeline to stay off the streets or to stay off drugs and alcohol. And so those stories were really heartwarming and powerful to have people, drag outside of the gay community for the most part, maybe not as much as it did, but used to have such a bad rap. It was, it was perversion to have men dressing in wigs and makeup. And this was the thing that actually was a lifeline to a lot of the guys who put on the show. So that's very apparent in the show too, is how much they relied on this annual event.
And I think for the first time, I was realizing that as a woman watching men be caricatures or, stereotypical women, but it really highlights stereotypes for women in a way that other things don't. I mean, what are your thoughts on that?
I mean, you're not going to have, breasts that are 2 feet large and hair that large platform shoes.
Yes.
You know that girl,
Well, and just the tropes that women, I mean, it's so different, like looking, especially the drag queens that are really, which a lot of them are very masculine looking in terms of their bone structure, just.
These are not men that should have been putting on dresses. You can tell they're guys.
Yes, absolutely.
I don't want to say across the board, but there is a large component of drag today that makes a drag queen should look like a woman, should look beautiful and presentable in a gown. This is not that. This is not that at all. Some of them maybe, but for the majority, many of these men had never put on women's clothing before. Many of them had never put on a pair of heels before, and it shows. And that's the charm of the show.
Yes, absolutely. It's you can't get tired of watching them walk in heels, like in platforms downstairs over and over. It's like, oh, could use a little practice. So what's the response been to the film?
It's so great. I'm so thrilled. This project was done as a passion project for me. Like we said earlier, it's not the kind of stuff that I usually involve myself in, and so I did it for the community, and it was just sort of a gift back to the men who affected my life back during that time. And it's a beloved piece. It's a piece of actual gay history. You know, it spans a large portion of gay history at a time when it was critical, when the gay community came together and became organized and became activists and fought for a cure. And it's because of men like the ones that put on the pageant that there's gay marriage and that there's gay rights. The seed of all of that was the AIDS crisis that pulled everybody together to fight for each other's lives. So it's a slice of history which I didn't expect. So that piece right there, there's a couple of iconic gay films that really delineate who we were back then. And I think that this is one of them. And I'm so happy that it has that voice.
You've been listening to Healing Wisdom at Outermost Radio. All of our shows are podcasts at WOMR.org. Also check out healingwisdomradioshow.com and contact me at Pandora@WOMR.org.